Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have Maggie Baingana with us from Shield Associates in Kigali, Rwanda. And in the conversations that we've had along the way, Maggie, I get the impression that you could have done anything, actually, and yet you chose the law. When did that happen and why?
Uh, Oh, thank you. Thank you. I want to start by thanking you for this opportunity. I'm really excited. I was unsure at the beginning, but then Keith is really good at making people feel comfortable. So thank you. Now, as far as why I became a lawyer, why the law, it's really steeped into my history. I'm from Rwanda, but my parents left Rwanda in 1959 during the first I could call it massacres or ethnic massacres. The Rwanda had just become a republic from a monarch. We were inheriting all problems from our colonial masters, and so my parents settled in Congo first, and then ended up living in Uganda. That is where I was born and raised. And during those years of growing up, we were first refugees. We were refugees in Uganda because we could not come back to Rwanda. And you grow up hearing that you belong to this country, but you can't go back because there are all sorts of political problems and your ethnic group is not allowed back in the country. So as a refugee child growing up, I used to think being a refugee was an exotic thing. It was like being a diplomat or an expert of some sort. I didn't know what it meant, and I thought I was very special. And my father used to tell us stories about our ancestors and things that stood out. He said there used to be great, great aunts. These are women who were amazing orators, who used to speak so well. And many times communities would call upon them to go and present their disputes before the king. And because they knew how to speak really well. And many times when my father would come and try to adjudicate conflicts between me and my sisters, he would always say, I feel sorry for anyone who is trying to win an argument with Maggie. She reminds me of these great aunts, and she could be a great lawyer one day. And he used to make such comments, and he would tell us stories about these old ladies. And imagine old ladies in colonial Rwanda going and really speaking well, and communities would come back to hear them. And I felt maybe I'm called to do this as a child. But that did not materialize. I wanted to be a singer, wanted to be a makeup artist. And then when I was in high school in 1994, the genocide against the Tutsi people happened in Rwanda. And you know the story, within 100 days, over 1 million people died, and bodies came floating on Lake Victoria, which is in Uganda. And I remember kids making comments like, oh, those are Maggie's relatives, you know, oh, those are because they knew I was Rwandese. And I remember having this sense of despair and sadness. I didn't feel an attachment to those people, but I just felt these many people dying because of who they are. Someone needs to do something about it. People who've done this need to account. And we, at the time, we were choosing between doing arts or sciences. And I remember sticking to literature and history. And I said, I think I'm going to be a lawyer, not because my ancestors were great lawyers, but because now I felt like I needed to do something about the atrocities that had happened. And I didn't know that we would be able to go back. But that same year, genocide started in April, and in July, the rebel forces that had come over took over power, and the borders were opened, and now Rwandese could return back to Rwanda. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to go and do something about what has happened. So in a short, long story cut short, that was some of the things that shaped my interest in becoming a lawyer.
It's not often that I am brought close to speechlessness, but if ever there was a sort of powerful rationale for becoming a poignant and powerful rationale for becoming a lawyer, I guess that was it. And it's perhaps the pop world and the makeup industry's loss and Rwanda's gain, and certainly the legal industry's gain. Has it been everything you thought it would be? once you started on that journey?
No, no, absolutely not. So I went to law school in Uganda because that's where I was studying, and I used to come to Rwanda for holidays and would see what was going on. Now there was a crisis. There was a crisis in Rwanda. People had died. Courts had been, there were no courts. They had to wait until 1996 to have the first trials of the genocide, because genocide was not a crime in the law. They say statistics that the whole country bar consisted of 11 lawyers right after the genocide. Judges had died, others had fled. And so in my mind, I actually thought I was going to go and start law as a public servant. I thought I was going to, be in the public and maybe one day end up being an attorney general or a justice in the Supreme Court. But I thought it was going to be something that would take so many years. Now, as soon as I finished law school, I did the bar. Now, this is in Uganda, based on the law is based on English common law, because they are a former British colony. So we read King's Court, journals, and Queen's Bench, and it is purely common law. As soon as I finish, I come to Rwanda, and immediately I'm given a job in the Prosecutor General's office dealing with Category 1 genocide cases in a purely civil law system, where many things are written in Kinyarwanda. I knew how to speak Kinyarwanda language, but I'd never studied it or read documents that are written in Kinyarwanda. I could speak it, but I could not function with documents. And I'm put in this system because there's no one else to do it. We are young. I'm fresh from law school, no experience. The only experience I had was as clerkship during the studying for the bar. And I had done corporate thing, contracts here and there. And now you are in this Prosecutor General's office, and the mandate is to work on processing and prosecuting genocide cases. And now the law had categorized them, and category 1 was those that planned the genocide, rape and sexual torture, and those one would face the death penalty. At the time, we still had the death penalty. And I find myself plunged into this, and without experience, but everyone expects you to do something because there's no one else to do it. And I remember I had a friend, same age, she was appointed as a judge in the Supreme Court because there were no judges, also fresh from law school. And so it was like being in a country and being there at a historical time when whatever small contribution you make actually makes big strides. So it was nothing that I had expected at all. So I did prosecutions, and it was very tough. And I ended up leaving it. Went back for an LLM. I did graduate studies so that I could get out the bad experience and the trauma that was caused by dealing with genocide perpetrators and handling their cases, and getting actually very bad thoughts. Started becoming a bad person, and I said, I don't want to do criminal law. I do not want to do genocide. I don't want to do anything. And when I came back, I detoured completely, went into development work, worked in higher education, started working on e-learning and managing US grants. But I always wanted to help people, and I always thought I would help people with the law. But then when I was in higher education, I thought, yeah, we're giving people opportunities for education, and this is helping people. But I greatly missed the law. And I felt like I just need to help people. I just want to get that feeling of when people get unstuck from a situation because you've used your skills and you've helped them. And that's how I ended up now in private practice, which I did not see coming. So that's how my path has completely changed from the original ideas that I had.
So it's been a real journey, and I suppose partly grounded in moving away from certain experiences, and partly grounded in that sort of passion you had to make a difference, but on a human level, on a personal level, rather than at first maybe it was more sort of theoretical or maybe even idealistic. You're now I'm going to get this slightly wrong, but the executive secretary of, well, you're actively involved at the top of two bodies. One is the Rwanda Women Lawyers, and the other is a Rwanda leadership program, but again, focused very much on helping young female lawyers to find a path, achieve their potential. Talk to me a little bit about those two things.
Mm. So it's I always say that this is a really wonderful time to be a woman in the world, and I have had these amazing opportunities to serve. And first, it's always pro bono. It's free. You give of your time because you think, you can make a difference. You can make a small contribution. And I was approached actually at the beginning of setting up this Rwanda Women Lawyers Association, because there had not been any kind in Rwanda, and there was a very strong women's organization in Uganda and in Kenya and in Tanzania, all our neighboring countries, and we did not have the same place where women lawyers could come and do advocacy for other women and actually deal with women issues, where women could come and feel free, where our voices are being heard. And so I was part of actually setting it up and registering it back in 2010, and the membership kept increasing, and we started focusing on the young up and coming women, and doing activities to empower them, and having platforms to discuss issues that affect them as women in different sectors of society. And in addition to that, I got elected on the Rwanda Leaders Program. This is actually on a national level. It's a religious group that organizes a prayer breakfast every year, and the president of a country has been coming, and all the top leaders, where we learn about servant leadership and value-based leadership, and helping support our leaders in different things that we do. I also serve as a women's representative on the East Africa Law Society. It's a regional bar that brings together over 30,000 lawyers in the 6 countries making up East Africa. And so I've had a wonderful opportunity to interact with amazing, amazing women from different walks of life in this region, and sharing experiences where we have different cultures and practices, some that are really good for women and others that are really bad. And we've had opportunities to advocate for removal of certain things and entrenching others. So that's what I've been doing, and I've enjoyed seeing women come out of their shells, women young, especially young women, especially mothers who are trying to thrive and make it into the business world, and struggling and being guilty, like all women feel guilty when they're mothers and they have to juggle their career. So that's what I've been doing, other than being in the law firm and practicing law.
And being a mother and homeschooling.
Yes, and being a wife and a
And being
sister and a daughter and all sorts of things. Yeah.
all the extraordinary things that women do day in, day out.
Yeah.
So one of the things that strikes me, and again from our first conversation, was that in many ways you almost seem to embody the spirit of Rwanda, the way that Rwanda has gone through such a sort of shocking cycles in its history, and such tragedy. And yet, whenever we speak, whether you're talking about women, whether you're talking about the law, whether you're talking about the challenges of homeschooling, or even using those human connections with other parents to generate business, not in a cynical way, but in a having conversations, you are so much about um, positivity and rebirth, and seeing the opportunities in things. Where does that come from?
It comes from the things that we've gone through from a young age as a refugee, to witnessing your country sort of go to hell and come back. And looking at people who've lost so much, and yet they have been resilient and have come up to build a vibrant society. Rwanda is a real example of resilience, because as I was telling, even the stories of the genocide and the prosecutions, the whole process was not focused on getting justice, but justice was a component of it. The most important thing was reconciliation. How do we learn to live together again? Okay, genocide has happened. We need to live together. You know, it doesn't matter that your neighbor killed your whole family. We have a small country. We have to live together. And I've seen that from the leadership, from everyone, because they have come to work together to overcome such terrible things and have made it work. Right now, Rwanda ranks very high in women in leadership. Like, our parliament is the best, I think, in the whole world, with 64% of women. And, you know, we've been given a voice, and so because of that, I don't want anything to hold me back. I will look at something, if, however terrible it is, there's something good that can come out of it. And no matter, even if I don't have anything, there's always something to give. If I don't have anything, at least I have my hands. I can do something with my hands, and I can give something. So I have seen so many examples. I've seen so many women. I've seen my mother. I have 10 sisters. So I have been surrounded by very strong women that I've seen overcome so many things, and yet they have kept their heads high. And I really believe that you can make something of yourself, even if you come from nothing.
Where are you in the 10?
I'm like, I have three after me, so I'm towards the end. But I often find myself like the boss. I'm the one they come to for advice. I'm the one whose opinion will be respected, because I think I used to win many of the arguments.
So so clearly there was some sort of almost innate legal, like your father pointed out, some innate legal characteristics
Yeah.
there already. Next week we have a lady called Julia Dar, who's done TED Talks and works for Boston Consulting Group, coming to speak with Mackrell International, and she's going to talk about constructive conversations and productive disagreement. It sounds a lot to me that much of what you're describing in terms of working on reconciliation, and that must have been very difficult in many scenarios, is precisely that. It's about finding ways of moving forward. And how has that fed into private practice? How has, tell me about, the values of Shield Associates and the way you run your firm, and perhaps also how that feeds into people coming into Shield as well.
Mm-hmm. So we've set up a farm that really puts forward a strong culture of empathy, and understanding. We value the human component of anything, and we've come. We have a group that has some francophone members. We have some anglophone members. We have people who've come from Congo. We have someone from here in Rwanda, originally from Rwanda, and we have others from Uganda. And we usually don't see things the same, but promoting that culture of saying, we listen. We want to be able to be those lawyers who actually listen and care for the human person who is in front of us before putting, the money and the drive of, oh, this is what we could do, but actually care for the person. And that is not just for the client, but also for our colleagues. And I have learned from many people, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts and read things on leadership, and that is one of the things that we've really picked. For example, if an associate makes a big mistake, the tendency is to, like, come hard on them and make sure this doesn't happen again, and give a stern warning. And this used to happen to me. This is the experience that I had growing up, because if you made a mistake, you were really rebuked and reprimanded. And but nobody would take time to say, are you okay? How are things at home? Because if I'm not been messing up for 2 months or 3 or a year, and one time I mess up, maybe try to understand, am I okay? Is this person okay? So this is a culture that we try to bring, and to learn to communicate with love. No matter how much you agree, just be respectful. And so we have created a niche for ourselves. We are small. Okay, we could go for a mid-size given the size of Kigali, but we are in a really wonderful location, and people have come to know us as people who will follow through, who will call and find out how that child that you are taking to hospital that time you cancel the meeting is doing, instead of saying, when can we reschedule? And also, of course, meeting their needs and getting them out of fixes. And even if we keep a small clientele, but we serve them well. So that is what our focus is on. Yeah.
Remembering the little things and the human
Yes.
things, how
Yes.
important that
Yes.
is.
Yes.
You touched on it just then.
Mm.
I mean, your experience in many ways, and your rationale for getting into law is probably, there's probably not a single person on this call, potentially, in some ways, and particularly our up and coming lawyers, who can relate to that. If I went round the room and said, you know, Melissa, Harriet, uh, you know, what made you go into law? And don't worry, I'm not going to do that. You know, there's not very many who will talk about the refugee experience and so forth. So you have learned, got dropped in at the deep end, had to learn very quickly. Um, but who did you look to in terms of guidance, mentorship, uh, as you've been progressing through your legal journey at the beginning, and who do you look to now?
Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say that I have one single person that I would look to. I have had a very wonderful line of people that have mentored and encouraged me along the way. The first group definitely is my sisters, because they're all phenomenal women who have spurred me on. None of them is a lawyer, but they're really excellent in their other fields. And when I had just started out in the prosecution office, one of the senior prosecutors there was a man who is currently our attorney general, and he taught me a lot of things that I knew at the time. And when I left, he encouraged me, you want to go to graduate school. And now, ever since I came back, we've kept in touch, and he has actually mentored me and encouraged me along the way. I've also learned from so many lawyers that I've met along the way. There are professors. There's an old professor of mine that we've kept in touch from the time I was in law school. An old professor from Uganda. I don't know, maybe some of you might know him. He's called Professor Sempebwa, who's he, you check in on each other as you go. And then I have been encouraged and supported by the very many people that I've met in Mackrell. One of the questions that Keith said that you'd ask me was, how do you keep in love with the law? And I'll combine with that, because one of the ways is through networking and meeting amazing group of lawyers from all over the world. You don't have anything else in common, but you have this. You have the law, you have the practices, and you have so much to share, and that keeps me going. But in terms of specific people, I would say our Attorney General is an excellent man with a sense of justice. I've seen him personally drive to prison to get people out who a court has said you're innocent, but because of procedure, they spend another week or 2 weeks there. Attorney General will get into his car, go to the prison, and personally pick someone and said, once the court has said they're free, 1 hour of keeping them, without their freedom is a violation that I can't stand. So I've been inspired by him mostly, and by all the amazing Mackrell lawyers that I've met over the years as well. Yeah.
So what part? Because initially you weren't sure about Mackrell International. You'd heard about this, and you touched on this when we were doing our open session for potential new Africa firms. What was it that made you think, I'll cross the line and engage with Macro International?
So it was, I heard about the network. I heard also about other networks. I would go and even in the region, there are some networks in Africa, like ALN, it's called Africa Legal Network. I went to a few events, and it's like, you come if you want, or there's no, there wasn't any warmth, and I thought this is going to be the same thing with this Mackrell that they're telling me about. They're telling me Mackrell, it's an international thing, and I said, okay, sounds good. I've seen others. Then someone said, you're welcome to come to an AGM. And I said, AGM, okay. When I'm not a member, they said, yeah, you can come if you're interested. You can present yourselves. And I said, let me just go and see what happens in these. And I remember the first evening, there was a reception, welcoming people, I know nobody. The only person that I knew who had invited me was Paul from Uganda. And of course, he wasn't there on the first day. He will come like on the second day or the third day. So I'm there, and I don't know anybody. And I realized I'm in this room. There is this warmth, and I could talk to anybody in that room. And I remember feeling like, this is what belonging to a fraternity feels like. They're talking, they're interested in you. You ask them questions, they're interested in actually telling you about themselves, and you learn from people from countries that I never thought I'd ever meet anyone from there. And everyone is there, and they're welcoming, and they want to learn about you. You're not even a member yet, and yet you're being welcomed into the group. And I'm thinking, I belong with these people. I belong with these people, and I want to be part of the group. And the inclusion and the interest, even before I had expressed a decision that we're going to join, is what really, really convinced me that this was a group that I wanted to be part of. Yeah.
So what would you say to the group of uh, people, group of lawyers that we have on the call today, but particularly those that are up and coming, that are our next generation?
Yeah. So what I would say, especially to young ones, both male and female, but especially females, please, women lawyers, please listen. Never doubt yourself. Number one, you can do anything. I wasn't sure that I would become a prosecutor, prosecuting the worst crimes ever as my first job, and I ended up being able to do it. So never doubt yourself. You have the ability to rise to the occasion as long as there's an opportunity. Number two, do not be afraid to stray from your initial plan. My plan was thrown all over the place, but you seize what you're given. You play the card you dealt, and that should be fine. You should be flexible. When you make mistakes, and this is something that I'm still learning. I hope to be helped as well. When you make a mistake, do not be too hard on yourself. Do not spend so much time kicking yourself and condemning yourself. And for whatever you do, please find out why. Don't just be content with knowing what. This is the assignment I've been given. Let me just do it, finish it, and hand it in. Why will give you a bigger picture and will help you to love what you're doing. So do not just focus on what. This is what I'm supposed to do. Look at the big picture. Why am I doing this? The other thing that I would tell young and upcoming lawyers is that get along with everyone. Hang out with everyone, not just the senior lawyers or your other lawyers, but the support staff, the administrators, the people who know the environment and the culture and the administration and the system. Don't make cliques. Just perform. The other thing, do not look at money. Money. Focus on getting the experience, because the experience will get you the money. But many young lawyers now want to be paid. Even interns will come and say, how much are you paying us? We want money, when they don't know anything. So volunteer, do work, create, gather a lot of experience, and then the money will come, as long as you love what you're doing. There's so much that we could share on that one, but those are some of the things, a few that I've put together, can think
So,
of now.
so which of those, I'm going to give you a time machine now, Maggie,
Yeah.
and send you back to when you were first starting out and you'd been dropped in the deep end. Which of those pieces of advice would you sort of pop out of the time machine, tap yourself on the shoulder and say, hey Maggie, think about this. This is what you need to know. Trust me, I'm you from the future.
Mhm. It's the one about mistakes, because once I made mistakes or someone pointed out my mistakes, I really took it very hard, and I would spend so much time kicking myself. Now, if I could speak to my younger self, I would say everyone makes mistakes, and even those ones who are rebuking and reprimanding you made mistakes, and you can grow and learn from them, and do not spend so much time dwelling on them. That one was a big one. And I also started out saying, okay, let's just do this. Let's just do this. Let me not ask why. Let me just get through today, because the emotional part of it was very, very heavy, because you're dealing with people who look at you and hate you and want you dead. Some of the people who would interview would tell us, we didn't do anything. We didn't finish you off because you're still alive. Why are we even being, prosecuted? And if I just used to shut my mind and just focus on completing the checklist of questions I have to ask. But if I had taken a step back and looked at the bigger picture, maybe I wouldn't have. And say, we are in this, we are solving an issue, we are bringing perpetrators to justice. I would have maybe been able to do that for longer, but I wasn't able to do that for longer, because I was like, this is too hard, this task is too hard, and I did not focus on the importance of it. It was just too draining emotionally. So
I think I can imagine. Just going to pause for a moment, because you touched on questions. Like, if anybody in the room today has any questions, and your mind isn't completely blown, please pop them in the chat, and I will pick them up. And whether that's about mentoring, personal, professional growth, the legal journey, something specific to Maggie, then please do that, and we'll pick them up as we go along. So, sort of coming back to the young lawyers, you talked about interns coming in and asking for, being very money driven. What are the other changes that you see in next generation lawyers coming through? What do you think you've had to adapt to, and what do you think, if you're giving a message to up and coming lawyers, you think they need to be aware of?
mm. We're in very different times than when we were starting out. There's so much distractions these days. We have the internet that can be used for good and bad, and the young lawyers, like everyone else, they are so distracted. The distractions are on your hand, they're on your fingertips. And so I don't see a lot of concentration, because before, you used to be, when you were in the office, you did only the office work. You would go to the library, get these books and read. And now it's much easier, but it's also easier to derail and waste so much time. I have seen that there's a lot of time that is wasted with the internet. You start out meaning well to read a certain law, but it's on the internet, and the message pops, and Instagram and TikTok and all sorts of things, and you find that hours have gone and people have not completed their work on time. So I would encourage that you put social media and all sorts of things away, so that you can concentrate on your work. I would say the other thing is that we have lived in a world now where there's a lot of material blessings. Children grow up with all sufficiency. in everything. They have everything that they need. And when they get to the workplace, if the expectation is that you will meet my needs and I will do this and you can, what am I getting out of this? And my message to them would be, I would wish that everyone had an attitude of gratitude. You're grateful that you're alive. First of all, you're grateful that you have this opportunity, however small it is. And seeking what you can give, not only what can I get, what can I get. And the other thing is that because we're in an environment that gives feedback very quickly, sometimes feedback is ignored because when you give feedback, they're like, oh, okay. And then I would encourage young lawyers, when you get feedback, constructive feedback, act on it immediately and find out how you're doing and improve yourself. And above all, keep learning. Don't stop and say, I have reached the level. Let me stop here.
So when you are mentoring young lawyers, whether they're coming up through Shield or as part of your mentoring program,
Yeah.
you know as well as I do that what you're saying is absolutely right. Your words are completely true, but it's the same way as saying to your saying to your children, eat your food. People don't have what you have. Be grateful for what you've got. People don't have what you have, and yet you can only appreciate or really understand your own experience, and therefore you relate to what you've got much more than what others don't, until you become older and more experienced, and you've had a few bumps along the road. How do you make that resonate?
It's very easy to make that resonate in our communities because we are surrounded by so much need, so much poverty, so much issues around. And instead of sitting and spending your time in the office and having coffee at the Java house, which is right downstairs, and sometimes we do go to the community. Just go to the legal aid clinic and see the kinds of problems that people are dealing with. This woman, her land has been grabbed because her husband has died, and the culture is, there has to be a male person to inherit, so this woman has been thrown out. There are children who are starving, there are genocide survivors who have nobody, and they have been able to maybe bring themselves up, and now someone has taken their ancestral home because everyone died, and she was a child when the genocide happened. Now she's of age, she's 20 or 22 or 25 or 26, and just those young people looking at these problems usually opens up their minds, because many of them will grow up in wonderful homes, go to wonderful international schools and be exposed. Their families send them to Europe and America and all sorts of places. And these are usually the ones that will apply for internships and want to become lawyers, want to make a difference, but they have not been in touch with the reality that is on the ground because they've grown up shielded. And so exposure to these problems that are not so far from us really does open minds, and unless someone is opposed to changing. But there's a lot of things that you look, even with my own children, especially during the month of April. In the month of April, we have a whole week of mourning when we commemorate the genocide, and stories are told. We go to hear these survivor stories. We go to, people have discovered bones of their relatives they didn't know where they had been buried, and my children have been exposed to the suffering and the fact that we want to keep this memory alive so that it never happens again. And pointing out all these things really opens their mind to say, so we really are in a category of people who are blessed. We have opportunities. So being grateful is something that has to be cultivated, whether it's young lawyers, whether it's children. It is something that I thought we must cultivate and instill in our young people. So we've had times when legal aid clinic, just go listen to people's problems during April. Go and listen to where people have come from, how they survived the terrible, terrible deals that they've gone through, and then look at your life and look at what you can do with it. And that has actually helped in many cases for us to
So that
change. to change the mindsets.
Change the perception, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's something you'd encourage then is young lawyers to actually go and walk in the shoes, or at least go and have a look at what's happening in where people are struggling, and then have a look at what you're doing and how you can make a difference.
Yes. Yes.
Maggie, you talk so positively. I know, not just within private practice, but in your life as a mum, as a wife, where you're still working on training your husband.
Yes.
And I understand, he's resistant still
Yeah.
to certain things, so there's
I
still
have to.
some work to be done.
Yeah, I have to bring him to a Mackrell meeting. Maybe he'll comply. Go
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Then you've got your mentorship programs, you've got your work at the university. Um, One, how do you fit it all in? And two, a question that comes up across the legal community in every country, in every jurisdiction, is about work-life balance. And Chris Lane in the UK asks about it. It's become the number one priority statistically for young professionals. How do you see work-life balance?
Okay, so for a long time, I thought work-life balance was a wonderful illusion that nobody will ever achieve. And then I came to a time where I thought I have to make peace with the fact that balance is not the most important thing at this moment, because the most important thing is, am I happy? I want to focus at finding happiness at work, at home, in the community, and everywhere where I serve. And so when the focus stopped being on balance and being okay with the fact that sometimes things will not be balanced, I will not be the perfect mom that my children want me to be at a certain point, and I'll not be the best lawyer in the law firm and put in all the time. Once I was okay with the fact that there might not be balance, but the focus is on what are those things that make me happy at work, at home, and being self-aware of these are the things that I want to focus on, make it so easy. And when you outline them, they look so many, and you're like, how do you put it all together? It's because sometimes it was a struggle, but then until I realized I am going to focus on what I enjoy and what makes me happy. So, for example, I realized that learning and growing alongside my kids makes me happy. I'm there when they discover something, and I won't be there for the whole week, for the whole day. But those specific moments when I'm there, they're homeschooling, and this one who is struggling to read and can now read and understand, and I'm there to witness that, that makes me happy. I enjoy providing solutions to clients, getting them unstuck. That makes me happy. I'm going to focus on that and do it well for a time that is allocated to that. I had an old friend who used to say, proper prior planning prevents problems, all these P's. And I said, okay, proper prior planning prevents problems. So I am going to plan and put in things that actually make me happy. So being with my kids when they're learning makes me happy. I have to find time and plan. Networking professionally and personally really makes me happy. Doing my nails and going to the hair salon makes me happy. Having deep conversations with friends and asking, how is your heart doing? Really makes me happy. Winning arguments with my very smart husband makes me really happy. And running a law firm that has amazing, diverse people, some are very funny, others are just wonderful people, makes me happy. So when I mix all that thing, not that it's perfect, but it is working and it is making me happy, I ensure that I don't do something that doesn't make me happy. So sometimes things will be unbalanced and I'll be okay with that. So if I have to carve out a second for each of these things, then I have achieved the most important thing. The other thing that I will mention before I leave the balance part is that we have a huge support network. In our African settings, you have aunties and uncles and cousins and grandparents and people who are there. So if I want a weekend away, I will not have failed to find people who will take my children. In fact, sometimes I will drop them at someone's home and I will go and I have some, recreation time with my friends, and you have people to help. We are not yet very individualistic. We have a lot of people in our homes, and we basically have villages. So it does help when you have to do all these other things.
You speak wisely, sort of, letting go of the illusion of balance, and the illusion of, I suppose that's perfection, isn't it? Um, and unless you're a tightroper, we can all let go of the illusion of balance. That's come through time, I guess, and with experience, and being open to understanding that's the case, and being open to then letting things go and saying, okay, I didn't fall over.
Yeah.
The balance has shifted, but I haven't fallen over.
Yeah.
How would you have said that was the same when you were a young lawyer?
No, it wasn't the same. I was filled with a lot of guilt. For example, when I would go home and I would say, now this is the time for home, I would feel so tempted to look at my phone or answer an email. And at the time, I did not have the maturity to say, these emails can wait. Let me read a story for my child. I would just give in to this temptation and I would go and answer an email. And before you know it, it's midnight. And I did not read for my child. And then I have handed in work very early, but I feel terrible and guilty that I did not spend this time with a child. So you live with this guilt, then you realize I cannot continue like this. Either I have to leave one and concentrate on the other. And I tried it. I actually had a whole year where I said, I'm going to be a stay-home mom. That same year is when I actually started homeschooling my kids, because now I had a lot of time. But then I was going crazy. I realized I can't do this alone. I can't. I thought I would be happy, fully happy, just doing this, but I am not. And yes, the kids are now homeschooling. They have got a rhythm. They're becoming independent, and I have all this energy, and I am not happy just sitting here and doing. So I have gone through the guilty phase, the stopping it all, and for a year focusing on this, and then I realized I can't. And now I have segments of here and there, and I feel like it's wonderful. But it wasn't always like that. I had guilt. I had I was tired. I was exhausted, and above all, I wasn't happy.
So if there was a message you could give to young lawyers on this call, and we've recorded it, so we'll share it with others, would it be drop the guilt?
Yes, I would say, when you're being tempted to answer that email, I would ask you, put it off until the morning. Read that story for the baby, or pick up that baby. The other thing, do not compare yourself to other women. Women, we have an issue of comparing yourself and saying, oh, that one seems to have it together. Do not focus on anyone or compare yourself. You have you. Do you. So ditch the guilt and plan out your work in a way that will give you a semblance of satisfaction, and you'll never get satisfaction 100% all the time. But focus on the main thing. Keep the main thing. Because like a young mom, you have those people very young for a short time, and you like, if I focus on them, then my career is going to slump. But I really encourage, because that work is extremely valuable too, but our society does not value that work. The society does not value the work you've spent at home, nursing children or caring for them. They value the work you spend in the office and the career. Who tells you that is a career and raising children is not a career? I have come to peace of, if I'm investing in children, that is a career. If I'm investing in a lawyer, that is a career. And one should not be looked at in preference to the other. Many women feel, because I've raised my children, then my career has suffered. Which career are you focused? What is important for you at that time? So just making peace with that it has not always been like that, but I have come to terms with that as I grow older. Keith makes me feel like I'm 64 or 70 or 50 something. I'm still young. So
What I'm always struck by is I'm sure there's people joining this call thinking, why is Maggie doing this experienced, seasoned lawyer mentorship course? She's way too young to be doing that.
Keith makes me do these things. I'm very young.
You're young, but so, such wisdom in one so young. And some of that wisdom comes, and you've touched on it, about being curious, being open, asking, "How is your heart?" That's not a question that people ask, but it's so powerful.
Yes.
So, in that curiosity, this is my final question for you today, Maggie, and then you can relax. It's a two-part question. What have you learned from your children, and what have you learned from in the last few years from a young lawyer that maybe you didn't expect? Let's start with your children.
Okay. For my children, I have first of all learned that even if they're all my children and they have the same father, they're extremely different people. They're extremely different human beings with different interests, different abilities, different rebellious natures, different everything. So learning to treat them as individuals and not having expectation. If the first one behaved like this, I shouldn't expect the second one. I have learned that just as not one size fits all when it comes to clothes, even with children, it's one of the motivators for homeschooling, because I wanted each child to go as their own individual self and not be lumped in a school where they expect them to perform the same, have the same speed, pass the same, have the same, and so they're different. And the other thing is that even if they're children, some of those people are extremely wise, and some of them have amazing sense of humor, that is just wonderful. And you just look at them and wonder how did they come up with this. So I've learned that they are individual human beings, not the same with anyone. From young lawyers, I have learned a lot. They have amazing new ideas of how to do things. And many times they don't share these ideas because maybe someone will not take them seriously. But in meetings, they'll make a comment or they will say something, and I'm like, why didn't I think about that? Because they come with a fresh mind, they have these wonderful ideas. And my message has been, please, no matter how stupid you think your idea is, just say it. It might be just what we need. Because when you've been doing work, you think, this is our system. But someone comes new from school and has a different perspective and says, why don't we change and do this? And it actually makes sense. So I have learned to embrace new ideas because we don't have a monopoly of these ideas. So these young lawyers are amazing with different ways of doing things, and they have challenged me in many instances. Yeah.
So we can look forward to seeing you on TikTok in the coming weeks then.
I don't know. I don't know about videos on TikTok.
Okay, so there's so far that they can challenge you, and then there's a line.
Yes. But I'm
Brilliant.
still doing that video for you tomorrow. I'm sending that tomorrow.
Fantastic. We'll put that on TikTok.